The envelope was thin, official-looking, and it wasn't addressed to both of us, just me. I remember standing at the kitchen counter, the late afternoon light slanting through the blinds, dust floating in the air like it always did around that hour. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft clink of a spoon against a mug somewhere behind me. I turned the envelope over once, then twice before opening it. I wasn't scared yet, confused maybe, curious. The kind of curiosity that still believes nothing truly bad can happen inside a home you've lived in for 22 years. I didn't know that with one letter, my understanding of family was about to crack straight down the middle. Before all of this, my life wasn't perfect, but it was steady, and at my age, steadiness felt like a gift. I had bought that house with my husband when our hair was still dark and our knees didn't ache in the mornings. It was a modest place, cream siding, a narrow porch, oak floors that creaked in familiar places, but it was ours. Even after my marriage began to fracture in ways I didn't yet have words for, the house remained my anchor. I knew every sound it made. I knew how the sun warmed the living room rug at exactly 3:15 in the afternoon. I knew which cabinet door needed a gentle lift to close properly. That house held my life, my disappointments, my forgiveness, my silence. My sister Lorna came back into my daily orbit after her divorce. She was younger than me by 4 years, always had been sharper with her tongue, quicker with laughter. When she called me that night, her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, hollow almost. "I don't know where else to go," she said, "just for a little while." I didn't hesitate. Blood does that to you, it short-circuits logic. She arrived with 3 suitcases, a box of old photo albums, and a look on her face like she'd already lost more than she was saying. I set her up in the guest room, the one we'd kept neat but unused for years. Fresh sheets, lavender soap, the window that looked out onto the side yard. "We'll figure it out," I told her. She cried into my shoulder that first night. I felt needed, useful, strong. For the first few weeks, it felt almost comforting to have someone else in the house. Lorna cooked dinners, simple things like soup and baked chicken, and folded laundry without being asked. She listened when I talked about my husband's distance, the way conversations between us had thinned to logistics and politeness. She nodded at all the right places. "You've always carried everyone," she said once, handing me a mug of tea. "Let me carry something now." It felt good to believe her. The changes were small at first, harmless, I thought. She offered to handle the bills while I was overwhelmed at work, said she needed something to focus on while she waited for her own life to restart. I watched her sit at the dining table with a neat stack of envelopes, glasses perched on her nose, lips moving as she read. "I used to be good at this stuff," she said. "Let me help." I said yes because she was my sister, because she had just come from a marriage where she'd been blindsided and I didn't want to add to her sense of uselessness, because I trusted her. I didn't notice right away that the mail stopped piling up the way it used to. I didn't question it when she started answering calls that came to the house phone, lowering her voice as she stepped into the hallway. "Just spam," she'd say, waving a hand. I didn't realize that my trust had quietly become access. There were days I came home and found her in my bedroom, standing near the filing cabinet. She'd smile too quickly, say she was looking for the warranty paperwork for the washing machine or the old insurance file. It made sense. Everything made sense when you wanted it to. Meanwhile, my marriage was slipping into something colder. My husband was staying late more often, coming home distracted. Sometimes he smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, clean, sharp, not mine. When I asked, he brushed it off. "Work thing," he said, "client dinner." I let it go, let everything go. That was my specialty. The first time I felt a real flicker of unease was a Tuesday evening in early spring. I came home early with a headache and found Lorna on the phone in the living room. She didn't hear me at first. Her voice was low, firm, nothing like the fragile tone she used with me. "No, that won't work," she said. "She can't know yet." I froze, keys still in my hand. When she noticed me, she jumped, actually jumped. "Oh hey," she said too brightly, ending the call. "You're home early." "Who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She hesitated just a beat too long. "Just someone from the bank about my accounts." My headache throbbed harder. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above me. My husband's back was turned. The room smelled faintly of detergent and something else, something unfamiliar. I told myself I was tired, that I was imagining patterns where there were none. But once doubt enters a room, it doesn't leave quietly. The letter arrived 2 weeks later. I slit the envelope open with my finger and scanned the page. The words didn't make sense at first. Terms like refinance, adjusted interest, updated deed. My eyes snagged on one line, then went back to it again. Borrower Lorna M. I read it 3 times before the meaning landed. My name wasn't there. I sat down hard at the kitchen table. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. My hands began to shake, not violently, just enough that I had to set the paper down. This was a mistake, I told myself, a clerical error, something that would be corrected with a phone call and a laugh. Still, my chest felt tight. The house seemed suddenly unfamiliar, like I was sitting in someone else's kitchen, surrounded by things that looked like mine but weren't. Lorna walked in then, humming softly, wiping her hands on a dish towel. You look pale, she said. Everything okay? I held up the letter. What is this? Her face didn't change right away. That's what scared me most. She took the paper from my hand, read it slowly, then sighed, like someone caught out by something inconvenient, not devastating. I was going to explain, she said. That was the moment something inside me went very still. I was going to explain, she said again, folding the letter neatly, as if that might soften it. I waited. That stillness inside me spread outward, wrapping itself around my chest, my throat. I didn't interrupt her. I wanted to see how she would tell it, what shape she would give the truth. Explain what? I finally asked. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone standing behind me. Lorna set the letter down on the table between us. She pulled out a chair and sat, crossing her legs slowly. I noticed then how composed she looked, calm, prepared. You've been under so much stress, she began. Your marriage, your job, you weren't thinking clearly. I stepped in. Stepped in, I repeated. Yes, to help. She leaned forward, palms flat on the table. The mortgage was a mess, high interest, bad terms. I have experience with this stuff. I refinanced, got a better rate, lower payments. I stared at her. Why is your name on the deed? She inhaled through her nose, exhaled slowly. Because the bank needed a primary borrower. Your credit, she stopped herself, then shrugged. It wasn't strong enough on its own. That was a lie. I knew it immediately. My credit had always been solid, careful, conservative, built slowly over years of paying everything on time. You removed my name, I said. I didn't remove you, she corrected gently. I replaced you. The word hit like a slap. For now, she added quickly, just until things stabilize, it's temporary. Temporary, like trust, like safety. I pushed my chair back and stood. My legs felt weak, but anger was starting to leak into the cracks. You did this without telling me. She looked genuinely surprised by my tone. I told you I was handling the bills. Handling the bills doesn't mean taking my house. She winced like I was being dramatic. It's not like that. Then how is it? She hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw something else flicker across her face. Calculation, relief that the secret was finally out. You weren't using the equity, she said. You were just sitting on it. Meanwhile, I needed stability, a foundation. We're sisters. This house is family. No, I said quietly, this house is mine. She shook her head. It was yours, now it's shared. I felt my throat tighten. The room seemed to tilt slightly, like I'd stepped onto a moving floor. How long, I asked, how long has this been done? She looked down. A few months. Month. All those afternoons, all those dinners she cooked, all those times she smiled at me across the table while my name was being erased from the place I slept. I heard the front door open then, my husband's footsteps, the familiar jingle of his keys. I didn't turn around. What's going on? He asked, glancing between us. Lorna answered before I could. We're just talking. No, I said, we're not. I handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his brow furrowing. Then he looked at Lorna. You did this? He asked. She met his gaze evenly. Yes. And you knew? I asked him, suddenly unsure. He hesitated just long enough. My heart dropped. You knew, I said again, louder now. He rubbed his forehead. She mentioned something about refinancing. I didn't think. You didn't think, my voice cracked. This is my house. It's our house, he said automatically. But the word "our" sounded wrong now, hollow. Lorna stood. I think emotions are high. Let's all calm down. I laughed then, a sharp, ugly sound that surprised even me. Get out, I said. She blinked. Excuse me. Get out. "This is my house too," she said quietly. I looked at my husband, he didn't meet my eyes. That was when I realized I was standing alone in a room full of people who had already moved on without me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Every creak sounded accusatory. Every shadow felt like a reminder that ownership isn't just legal, it's emotional. In the early hours of the morning, I got up and walked through the rooms, the living room where I'd celebrated birthdays, the kitchen where I'd burned countless dinners and laughed about it, the hallway where my children had once measured their height against the wall. I felt like a guest in my own memories. By sunrise, I had made a decision. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one. A quiet one. The next day, I took a sick day from work and went to the bank. The woman at the desk was polite, efficient. She explained the paperwork in neutral tones, as if she were discussing weather patterns instead of the dismantling of my life. Yes, the deed was legally altered, she said. All signatures were verified. Whose signatures? I asked. She slid a copy toward me. Lorna's, my husband's. Not mine. My hands clenched. How is that possible? She hesitated. There was a power of attorney on file. I felt cold all over. What power of attorney? She checked her screen, dated 6 months ago. 6 months ago, around the time I'd been hospitalized briefly for exhaustion, around the time I'd trusted my sister to handle things. I thanked the woman and walked out, my legs carrying me on muscle memory alone. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and cried, not loudly, just steady, silent tears that soaked into my collar. Betrayal doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers until you can't ignore it anymore. When I got home, Lorna was in the kitchen again, chopping vegetables. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. "No," I replied, "we don't." She sighed, "You're being unreasonable." I looked at her then, really looked, at the ease with which she stood there, knife moving rhythmically as if nothing fundamental had shifted. "You took advantage of me," I said, "when I was tired, when I trusted you." She set the knife down carefully. I did what I had to do. "For yourself," I said. She didn't deny it. That night I began gathering documents, bank statements, old emails, hospital records, anything that told the story she thought she'd buried. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning survival. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt and disbelief, a quiet resolve began to grow. She had taken my house. But she hadn't taken my voice. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork. It was the waiting. The waiting while Lorna moved through my house like she owned it. The waiting while my husband avoided my eyes, speaking to me only when necessary, as if silence could absolve him. The waiting while every room felt slightly off, like the walls themselves were listening. I didn't confront either of them again, not right away. I needed to understand exactly what had been done to me before I decided what to do next. Rage makes you sloppy. I couldn't afford to be sloppy. Every evening after work, I sat at the dining table with a legal pad and a cup of coffee that always went cold. I spread documents out in front of me like pieces of a puzzle: mortgage statements, hospital discharge papers, copies of emails Lorna had sent on my behalf. That was when I noticed it, her language. Per our previous conversation. As discussed. Authorized to proceed. Conversations I never remembered having, decisions I never recalled making. The power of attorney document sat in the middle of the pile like a quiet accusation. My signature was there, my name, my handwriting, but something about it felt wrong, too neat, too deliberate. I took it to a handwriting analyst recommended by a friend of a friend. She studied it silently, magnifying glass in hand. "This signature was traced," she said finally, carefully but not originally signed. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Forgery." The word felt heavy but clarifying. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't family helping family. This was theft dressed up as concern. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the house grew brittle. Lorna stopped cooking. She stopped pretending. She spoke to me with a tight politeness as if I were a tenant overstaying my welcome. "You should really think about what you're doing," she said one evening as she passed me in the hallway. "Dragging this out won't help anyone." "I'm not dragging anything," I replied. "I'm correcting it." She laughed softly. You don't have the leverage you think you do. That night I overheard her on the phone again, whispering, strategic. She doesn't know everything, she said, yet. Something about the way she said yet made my stomach turn. I started sleeping with my bedroom door locked. My husband tried to speak to me a week later. He cornered me in the garage, the smell of motor oil and dust thick in the air. She's under a lot of stress, he said. You know how she is. I stared at him. You signed the paperwork. He looked down. She said it was temporary. Did you write it? No, he admitted. I trusted her. The irony almost made me laugh. You trusted her, I said slowly, but not me. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. That was when I knew whatever marriage we had left had been collateral damage. I hired a lawyer. A woman about my age, sharp-eyed and calm. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. When I finished, she folded her hands. You have a strong case, she said. Forgery, fraud, undue influence. Will I get my house back? I asked. She met my gaze. Yes. The certainty in her voice steadied me more than anything else had in weeks. What about my sister? I asked. That's up to you, she said. Legally, there will be consequences. I thought about Lorna's voice in the hallway, about her calm confidence, about how easily she'd rewritten my life. I don't want revenge, I said. I want truth. She nodded. Truth has a way of being painful. The first legal notice arrived 2 days later. Lorna read it at the kitchen counter, her face draining of color. She crumpled the paper in her hand. What did you do? She demanded. I protected myself, I said. You're trying to ruin me, she said, her voice rising. No, I replied, you did that yourself. She slammed the paper down. After everything I've been through. After everything you put me through, I corrected. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Word spread quickly in the family. My mother called, her voice shaking. Is it true about the house? Yes, I said. She said you agreed, my mother whispered. I didn't. There was a long pause. I don't know what to believe. I closed my eyes. Believe the documents. Some relatives took Lorna's side, said I was being harsh, that family should handle things privately. Others stayed quiet, choosing comfort over confrontation. I learned something then. Betrayal doesn't just fracture trust, it reveals who values peace over justice. The court date was set for early summer. Lorna moved out before it arrived, left behind a half-empty closet and a note on the counter. I never meant to hurt you, I needed this. I read it once, then threw it away. Need is not a license to steal. The day of the hearing, I wore a simple blue dress, nothing dramatic. I wanted to look like myself, not a victim, not a villain. Lorna avoided my eyes across the room. My husband didn't come. The judge listened carefully, reviewed the evidence, asked questions. When the ruling came, it was swift. The deed would be restored, the refinance reversed, an investigation opened. Lorna's shoulders sagged. I felt no triumph, just a deep, quiet relief. Afterward, as I walked out of the courthouse, the sun felt warmer than it had in months. I stood on the steps and breathed in, filling my lungs. My house was coming back to me. But more than that, I was coming back to myself. The house felt different after the ruling. Not immediately, nothing that dramatic, but slowly, like a body relearning how to breathe after being held underwater too long. The rooms were the same, the furniture hadn't moved, yet something invisible had shifted back into place. Ownership does that, so does dignity. Lorna never came back. She sent one last text a week after the court date. I hope you're happy. I stared at the words for a long time before deleting them. Happiness wasn't the word for what I felt. Relief, yes. Grief, definitely. A hollow space where my sister used to be. My husband moved out shortly after. He packed quietly, methodically, like a man trying not to disturb what little remained between us. On his last night, he stood in the doorway of the bedroom and cleared his throat. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. I know, I replied, and I did, that was the problem. He waited as if expecting more, an apology, a plea, something cinematic. There was nothing left to give him. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence settle. It felt heavy at first, then honest. The legal process took months to fully unwind. There were documents to sign, calls to return, explanations to give. The bank issued formal apologies. The deed was corrected, my name printed clearly where it belonged. Each signature I wrote felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. People in the family began to call again, cautious at first, then warmer once the truth became unavoidable. Some apologized, others avoided the subject entirely. My mother came by one afternoon with a casserole and eyes full of regret. "I should have listened to you sooner," she said quietly. I hugged her, careful, restrained. "You listened when it mattered." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Lorna, I heard, had moved in with a friend in another state. She told people I'd betrayed her, that I'd chosen money over family. I didn't correct the story. Sometimes the truth doesn't need defending, it just waits. I began to rediscover the house. I painted the guest room a soft gray and turned it into a study, moved the desk to face the window, bought a new lamp, small changes, deliberate ones, marks of intention. I found myself lingering in the kitchen in the mornings, sipping coffee slowly instead of rushing. I let the radio play, I let the quiet stay. Healing, I learned, isn't loud. There were nights I still woke up uneasy, heart racing, the old fear sneaking back in. On those nights I walked the house, touching doorframes, pressing my palm against the wall in the hallway. I am here, I would think, this is mine. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Lorna at the grocery store. She looked thinner, tired, older somehow. We stood there between the canned goods and the cleaning supplies, two women who shared blood and history and now very little else. "I didn't think you'd want to see me," she said. "I didn't," I replied honestly. She flinched. I was desperate. I was vulnerable, I said. We stared at each other, the past hanging between us. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Her voice was flat, practiced. I nodded. "I believe you're sorry." She waited, hope flickering in her eyes. "That doesn't mean things go back," I added. The hope dimmed. She nodded once. I figured. We parted without a hug. Some doors close quietly, others lock. Life settled into something new. Not better, not worse, just mine. I learned to enjoy my own company, took long walks in the evenings, read books I'd been meaning to read for years, reconnected with friends I'd neglected while carrying everyone else. The house no longer felt like a battleground, it felt like shelter again. Looking back, I understand now how easily trust can be weaponized. Lorna didn't break into my house, she didn't force me to hand anything over. She waited until I was tired, until my marriage was shaky, until my guard was down. She used love as leverage. And I let her, because that's what family had always meant to me. But I learned something important through all of it. Being kind doesn't mean being careless, and loyalty doesn't require self-erasure. The day I framed the corrected deed, I stood in the living room and held it for a long moment before hanging it on the wall inside the hallway closet, out of sight but not out of mind. A quiet reminder. There's a strange calm that comes after everything falls apart and then settles again, not the kind that erases the damage, but the kind that lets you finally see it clearly. I felt it one Sunday morning while standing at the sink washing a single mug. Sunlight spilled across the counter, catching on the rim of the glass like it used to years ago. The radio murmured softly in the background. Nothing extraordinary was happening, and that was the point. For the first time in a long while, my life belonged entirely to me. I began noticing how much of myself I'd been giving away for years, long before Lorna moved in. I had made a habit of smoothing things over, of absorbing other people's chaos so they wouldn't have to. I called it love, I called it loyalty. But love without boundaries isn't love, it's slow erosion. I met with my lawyer one last time to finalize the remaining paperwork. She smiled as she slid the folder toward me. "You handled this with grace," she said. I shook my head. I handled it with necessity. She laughed softly. Sometimes that's the same thing. As I left her office, I realized something else had been resolved quietly in the background. My marriage. The separation had turned permanent without a single dramatic conversation. My husband filed, I signed, we divided things cleanly, fairly. There were no battles left to fight, only lessons already learned. On the day the divorce was finalized, I went home and cooked myself dinner, just for me. I ate at the table instead of the couch. I lit a candle, not for romance but for acknowledgement. This is a life, I thought, and it's enough. Lorna never tried to contact me again. Occasionally, someone would mention her in passing. She'd started over somewhere else, taken a job, told a different version of her story to new people. I hoped she found whatever she'd been chasing. But I stopped wondering if she missed me. Missing someone doesn't undo what they've done. The house became a place of intention. I planted herbs in the backyard and learned how to keep them alive. I repainted the front door a deeper blue. I fixed the loose cabinet hinge myself instead of waiting for someone else to do it. Small acts, quiet affirmations. I hosted friends again, people who laughed easily, who listened, who didn't need anything from me except my company. We sat around the table with plates balanced on our laps, telling stories that didn't ache. The house filled with a different kind of noise. One evening, as I sorted through an old box of photographs, I found a picture of Lorna and me as girls, our arms around each other, smiling wide, trusting completely. I didn't tear it up. I slid it back into the box. Some memories don't need to be erased to be set down. What surprised me most was how the anger faded, not all at once but gradually, like a bruise healing. In its place came clarity. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped imagining what I should have said, stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Closure, I learned, is something you give yourself. I tell this story now not because I want sympathy, but because I know how easy it is to mistake familiarity for safety. How often women, especially, are taught to make room, sometimes until there's no room left for themselves. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, I hope you hear this part clearly. You are allowed to protect what you've built, even from people you love. Especially from people who misuse that love. The house still creaks in the same places. The afternoon sun still warms the rug at 3:15. Some things don't change, and that's a comfort. Others do. And sometimes those changes save you. There are moments in life that don't look dramatic from the outside. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a quiet realization that something you trusted has been slowly slipping away from you, and by the time you notice, it's already gone. What happened to me didn't happen all at once. It happened in small permissions, small silences, small decisions to trust when my instincts whispered otherwise. I tell you this because many of us, especially women who carry families on their backs, are taught that love means endurance, that loyalty means sacrifice, that saying yes keeps the peace. But peace built on your own erasure is not peace at all. Losing my sister didn't break me. Losing my marriage didn't either. What nearly did was losing my sense of self, my right to question, to protect, to say this is mine without apology. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I finally listened to myself. And maybe that's the real lesson here, not that family can hurt you, because we already know that, but that you are allowed to draw a line even when your hands are shaking. You are allowed to choose truth over comfort. You are allowed to walk away from anyone who benefits from your silence. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? I'd really like to know. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of a moment when you had to choose yourself, leave a comment and share it. These stories matter because they remind us we're not alone in the quiet battles. And if you want to keep hearing real stories like this, stories about betrayal, resilience, and the strength it takes to start over, please like this video and subscribe. It helps these voices reach others who might need them. Thank you for listening. And thank you for holding space for the truth.